Hi, welcome to Discern. Today is Wednesday, December 1st. I'm Ross. I'm in for Jess, and we're here with Jim as always. Hi, Jim.
Hey, good to be with you today, Ross. How are you?
I'm doing well. So today the big news everybody's going to be talking about is what's going on in the Supreme Court. So we're just going to jump right into that story and then dialogue a bit about what's going on. This is from ABC News. The U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday will consider a case that could fundamentally transform abortion rights in America by overturning Roe v. Wade and clearing the way for new restrictions on abortion in roughly half the country. The justices will hear arguments in Dobbs v. Jackson, Women's Health, over a Mississippi law that prohibits termination of pregnancies after 15 weeks. A decision upholding the state's 15-week abortion ban would implicitly reverse nearly 50 years of Supreme Court precedent and open the door to state restrictions much earlier in pregnancy. You cannot uphold Mississippi's 15-week ban on abortion and continue the precedent of Roe v. Wade. They're not compatible, said Nancy Northup, president and CEO of the Center for Reproductive Rights. There is no middle ground. Okay, so Jim, this is going to be, hotly discussed, contested, debated from all angles. Just help us break this down. Why is today's Supreme Court hearing such a big deal?
Yeah, let's start there. It's a good question because obviously there have been a lot of Supreme Court hearings on abortion since Roe v. Wade back in 1973. So what makes this one so different? So Roe v. Wade, 1973, was the landmark decision by the Supreme Court legalizing abortion, overturning state regulations that would prohibit abortion or restrict abortion. In Texas specifically, the Wade was actually Henry Wade, the district attorney in Dallas at the time. And so from then till now, abortion has roughly or generically been legal in the United States with various restrictions posed by various states. And across the time, the court has considered various nuances within that context, but it's never taken a case that could lead it to overturn Roe v. Wade itself. The closest would be Casey back in 1992, when it again voted to uphold essentially the finding of Roe. And from that time to this, the cases it's taken have been more on the edges. They've been nuances around specific legislation in the context of one particular kind of limitation versus another. But the quote that you read is exactly right. For the first time, the court has the ability in this, if it wishes to do so, to essentially overturn Roe itself. Now, that would not make abortion illegal in America. It would return it back to the states. And already about half of the states in America have roughly made a decision that if Roe were overturned, they would on some level make abortion illegal in their states. The other half have roughly decided that they would not do that they would uphold abortion in their states. So it become a state battle as opposed to the national battle that it is right now. The very fact that the court took this case, it's what's indicating to many observers that perhaps they're willing to do this. Otherwise, why would they even take the case on? There's a doctrine known as stare decisis, meaning it has been decided, which essentially means that the court very rarely overturns Supreme Court precedent, which is what they would be doing this time. They have done that on occasion, and perhaps they'll do that with this. That's what we just don't know, but that's why this is such a landmark ruling potentially. The hearing is, as you said today, we're expecting the ruling to be issued probably next June, and it could be a massive sea change for abortion rights in America.
Yeah, the mention on overturning precedent is one key kind of highlight that makes this pretty significant. When I think as kind of a Christian and I think about the conversations we've had about how to engage culture, are we of it? Are we in it? Are we against it? And we've gone through kind of different stances you could have on how to get involved in what's happening around us. I think, look, there's been a lot of Supreme Court hearings this year. You could dial in or not dial in to a lot of the different rulings. I think we take a stance here of don't tune anything out. Let's not put our fingers in our ears just because it's government, just because it's justices that we may or may not align with. Why should Christians care, though, about this case? And not to say they shouldn't care about others, but especially what about this one? Why should Christians care?
Yeah, it's a great question because as we look before at the various models of engaging culture, you have a Christ against culture that really want nothing to do with a larger culture. So why am I even having this conversation? Christ of culture, you're going to go where the culture goes. I'd be wanting a Christ transforming culture where we're salt and light. And I would argue that when we're talking about life itself, We're talking about one of perhaps the most basic biblical doctrines that we could be discussing. We go back to Genesis 1, where God made us in his image after his likeness. From that point to this, God considers life sacred from conception to natural death. That's a basic foundational biblical bedrock principle. And so for Christians not to care about life at its most fragile, at its most defenseless, is, I think, in so many ways an unbiblical position to take. I believe that God cares deeply about the unborn, the preborn, and is calling us to do the same. I would also make the argument that for Christians not to care about this issue means that we're not going to engage the culture on any issue, because this is so foundational to us that if we're not going to pray about this, if we're not going to pray for the justices as they hear this, if we're not going to pray for those that are making the argument in defense of life, if we're not going to look for ways that we can support life personally, then really we're keeping the salt in the salt shaker, we're keeping light under the basket on the most significant issues of all. And that's obviously not what Jesus is calling us to do when he says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." This is one of those vital issues where Christians need to stand up and be counted and then be on our knees in prayer.
So to stand up and be counted, I think a place that I can go is, okay, this is something that's happening 1,000 miles away. I could pray over with the outcome, which absolutely we should do. But how do I stand up and be counted practically?
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that we're not just for birth, we're for life. We should be pro-life. Again, from conception to natural death. So I'm asking God, what can I do to help innocent life, to help defenseless life, to help those that are on some level facing need in their life for which I can make a difference? God, what does that mean for me? It might be that God wants you to support the pro-life ministries in your area, that God wants you, by virtue of your prayers, your financial support, your volunteerism, to help women that are facing at-risk pregnancies. The largest single reason women say that they choose abortion is because of financial constraints in their lives and their belief that they cannot afford to bring another child into the world. Well, we can do something about that. We can help with that. We can help with people that are alone and abandoned, with people that feel they have no family resources, with people that would like to adopt their child out but don't know how to do that. We can step into that space as the church and as believers. We can be asking God, Lord, if it's not specifically this issue, where else could I be helpful, especially this Christmas season? Where can I make a difference for impoverished families that can't afford presents for their kids? Where can I step into those that can't afford heating bills during the winter season? What can I do to be pro-life in all the dimensions of life? I promise you this, if you will ask the Lord today where he would send you to make a difference for life, he will answer your question. Someone once asked the Lord, why do you allow all the suffering in the world? And the Lord replied, I was just about to ask you the same question. I believe he's asking us that question even today.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim. I think this is such a critical issue for us to focus on this show right now because it's going to be in the news. It's not going anywhere. And as you say, life is at the center of it. And so thank you for the thoughts. We're going to be revisiting this more this week, almost certainly. We'll have the hearing today. There'll be dialogue from the hearing. We're going to want to unpack some of that as well. So in next episodes throughout this week, we're going to be touching on this again. This is our show for today. We will see you back tomorrow on Discern.